Okay, well here we are, and welcome everybody. This is a live Hangouts On Air broadcast of Plus Pals Debates, our ongoing series on various topical issues that affect the Google Plus and generally the online community. A lot of these aren't necessarily world-threatening, and we know this. If you're awesome, you actually kind of find this stuff cool. But today's an interesting episode, and really glad to bring it to you. And I have three good friends of mine here whose input will be undoubtedly valuable because we are talking about the art of the interview and parenthetically the Hangout interview and what this new medium delivers for those of us who host topical interview-based shows, and hopefully how you out there, if you're watching and you actually want to have a show of your own, maybe give you some tips, or if you're Hangout-shy, you can kind of get in the game like that. All right, so without further ado, let us go ahead and introduce our esteemed panel right there, and I hope the bug that G Plus had with actually lining up Hangout members in alphabetical order in a Hangouts On Air is fixed right now, because it used to be scrambled all over the place. But in alphabetical order, as far as I know it. Okay, from Bentonville, Virginia, we have Dan McDermott. He is, of course, the host of the very excellent Google Plus Week. Dan, good to see you, and thank you for joining, sir.
Great to be here with you, all the way in Guam, where it's much nicer weather than we're having.
Yeah, and if we were trying to do this 15 years ago over a long-distance call, believe me, the cost per minute, we both have to have second jobs and everything. So thank God for innovation.
And there'd be like a 2-minute delay in between talking. Yeah, it'd be crazy.
So funny.
There would, yeah. Okay, and of course, coming to us from the Lone Star State, from San Antonio, the very lovely Hermine Ngnomire, who is the host of the Bottom Line Live and Mad Mondays, almost, the excellent show that profiles everything going on with Mad Men. So, Hermine, how are you tonight?
I'm doing excellent, thank you, and I'm excited to be here with such great guests and nothing but guys around. There could be nothing better. There you go.
Okay, and then of course, the voice you're hearing laughing, raring to go, and the best dressed certainly out of all of us, is certainly better than I am tonight. I've got a throwback Hartford Whalers jersey, is the very dapper Peter McDermott, who comes to us from Nashville, Tennessee, the volunteer state. So Peter is, of course, the host of the equally excellent G Plus interview series, which if you guys haven't checked out, then you definitely should, because it is phenomenal. Peter, how are you doing tonight?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having us here, Jason. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, now, two burning questions, and I alluded to this earlier when I teased it. First of all, I'm not sure the entire Google Plus community wants to know or is even aware, but Dan and Peter, are you guys actually related?
Well, actually, that wasn't my laughter you heard. That was actually Dan from the other side of the room. It just happened to pick up on my microphone.
I'm just upset because I have to keep picking up his soda cans in the living room. It's crazy.
Well, you need to clean your room
here
once
in
in a
Music
while,
City. Peter and I are not related as far as we know, but McDermott is an Irish name, and so you never know what's going on, right? Because there's lots of Irish folks, and they have lots of kids, so who knows? But we actually had the privilege of meeting here on Google Plus, and so, but because we're both in the same sort of broadcasting type on Google Plus area, that people frequently ask that question. We get that all the time.
Here, I have one more question for you, Peter, because of course you went to school in Knoxville at the great University of Tennessee, so I'm sure you're a orange and white flag flying volunteer.
I was when I was there, but I hate to say I don't have a very tight allegiance there, as many people in the volunteer state would.
Okay, well, every time I watch a game and the Volunteers, especially because I'm a college football analyst, every time I watch a Volunteers game, it always makes me want to go out for a creamsicle when I see the end zone.
I certainly understand. I certainly understand how that could trigger that response.
Okay, and as per your profile, which anybody can check out on Peter's profile page, if you don't have him circled already, and let me just remind you and highly suggest that you circle all of these fine people because their streams are excellent. You were actually in Knoxville right on the tail end of the great Peyton Manning for football and Shamiqua Holdsclaw for women's basketball actually being there. What was the leftover, like the residual result of, like all-time greats in college sports and everything? What was that like actually going to school there at that time?
Well, I worked for the police department at the University of Tennessee for a short time, and we kept getting calls at dispatch at about 3 in the morning of inebriated souls asking us if there was a bronze statue of Peyton Manning on campus, to which I must tell you, regrettably, there is not.
Bill?
Well, I'm sure a lot of our friends in Gainesville and everything wanted to do something to that statue.
Oh, I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would. It's probably better that they didn't. But even here in Nashville, everybody was Peyton crazy for the Titans, trying to get Peyton Manning to come here. One of the local radio stations, 107.5 The River, they actually changed their call sign to 107.5 The Peyton until he made his decision. And, of course, they were very disheartened when he decided not to come to Nashville.
That's awesome. I did not know. Okay, well, I assume, but I did not know that for sure. Okay, so
Aren't they the Manning?
on to the... There you go. Well, on to the matter at hand. Of course, lady and gentlemen, we are talking tonight about the art of the Hangout interview. So we'll go ahead and just open it up, because for those of us that are actually in the communications business, I know like all four of us have, obviously we work in the communications field. Doing an interview certainly isn't, as I try and frame myself up better. Okay, doing an interview certainly isn't brain surgery, or it's not like being a construction foreman or like being a special forces soldier where it's that taxing and everything like that. But for people just casually looking at everything, it can be a lot harder than it actually looks and everything. So maybe let's just open it up and everything and talk about each of your respective shows, and we'll go from Dan, Hermine, and then Peter and everything like that. What is your general philosophy as far as being a moderator and then as being a participant in your shows and actually conducting these interviews and guiding discussion?
Wow, I would say the key thing is to remember the audience. There are all sorts of things, show integrity and try to be fair and try to balance things and all that stuff. But the main thing is remember the people watching. You want to keep it fast-paced. You want to get going as quickly as possible. Remember that famous meme, I forget what it was called. It was called the something constant on YouTube, where some guy posted on Reddit or somewhere, I'm getting this all wrong, but he posted that he said that every time he sees a YouTube video, he immediately advances about a third of the way in, because the first third is BS and irrelevant, and the content starts about a third of the way in. And that is so interesting, because that's not always true. But if you notice on my show, Google Plus Week, after I saw that, especially so, but even as I learned before I saw that, I will just go straight into it. I don't have a fancy intro. I don't have music, nothing. I go like, welcome to Google Plus Week, or unofficial, blah, blah, blah. Now, what about this story? Let's bring our first guest in. And I don't want to lose people, because I think the statistics are, and you guys, can correct me on this, but I think that most people who click away early from a YouTube video will do so in like the first few seconds. I mean, you have to really blast them with something compelling, because there's so much competition. And there's so many Hangouts out there, so many live shows out there, so many recorded videos. And so I try to get right into it, and then I try to have interesting guests. I try to assemble a panel with qualified opinions. That's very important. You don't just want people bloviating, like spouting nonsense. You want folks who can speak with some intelligence and experience on issues. And it's taken me, and Jason, you and I have conversed about this. It's taken me a long time to assemble a panel. Like on Google Plus Week, I have Oleg, who's born in Russia and came here, and I have Alan, who is both of them are computer gurus, and then Sarik, who's our newest regular panelist, and a bunch of others who I'm forgetting, and I apologize, but it's taken me months and months, almost a year, to assemble this panel of folks who people can take seriously. If you look at shows, and we said this before, you can have a fancy-looking show. Look at the Pat Sajak show. How long did it last, right? It had a professional set, whatever. It didn't work. And then you look at other shows. Huh? The Magic Johnson show. Exactly. But then you look at the McLaughlin Group, which has an older set, and it's regularly beats Meet the Press in the D.C. market, and it's very popular. It's a political show. It's about the content. It's about the guests. You got to have great content, great topics. You got to have good headlines, good introductions to stuff. Have a good way to, make sure you order your stuff well. Don't spend 1,000,000 minutes in the beginning, with other stuff, and get right into your topics and grab them. If it's but I'm a news guy, and I'm doing like a tech news show, so it's a different animal. There are casual hangouts, there are humorous hangouts, there are cooking hangouts where you might talk about the history of a dish before you get straight into the cooking. But for what I do, I find that if you got to jump right on the topic, and if you want to know, what, look at the people who get the ratings. On cable news, look at Bill O'Reilly. Look at Charlie Rose at the brilliant introductions that he does. Look at Sean Hannity or Rachel Maddow. They're just really good at introducing topics. And I'm trying to list people from both sides of the spectrum because that's not what this is about. But you got to grab the viewer. If I had to sum it all up, I would say remember the viewer watching. They want fast-paced, interesting entertainment, and they want you're entertaining them first and foremost. You might be intellectually stimulating them. You might be teaching them, but you have to be able to entertain them first, or the other stuff isn't going to happen.
All right. Well, there's an interesting dichotomy, and I want to bring Hermine into the discussion now for her input because, Dan, by virtue of the fact that your show is naturally called Google Plus Week, you exist kind of in that vacuum, and by your own admission, you deal with tech news, and you're dealing with a very specific, very finite group of people that you have worked with over the period of months and everything. So you guys are somewhat familiar with each other, and you kind of know who's going to be the antagonist, who's going to be pro, and who's going to be con as far as the argument. You're dealing with relatively the same amount of information and the same type of information every week. Hermine, your thoughts, because your show, the Bottom Line Live, you guys talk. Yeah, and what I find so refreshingly unique about your take on this whole thing is you not only guide and lead the conversation, but because you are so brilliant and so opinionated yourself and everything like that, you guide the discussion, you get it started, but then you also jump right in and defend your positions, which, for a TV guy like me, we could never do that.
Definitely. There's there's a lot in this space, I feel, that's open, and I definitely have a different approach. One of the things that was crystal clear is I come from the side of advertising and strategic planning. What was most important when we assess people is that it was real. Whatever was going on stage, whatever was happening here, because anything else they can go to their TV and get. We have to be delivering something that they can't get, and it has to look like it's not manufactured, and it has to be that real and that honest. So with it, I do a lot of preparation. I prepare. I have a pretty detailed run of show for anyone that's been on the Bottom Line Live or anything else that I do. These are the questions and these are the segments. So to the point that Dan was making earlier, people do want to jump in and they want to be energized right from the bat. We know that we are creating something that's live that's not going to live like that. We split ours into 5 to 7 minute segments, and each segment is focused on a particular market or category. We know that there are some that youth or Facebook audiences will find a bit more interesting, and we keep to that. We know that there are some for Google audiences that are more in-depth and intriguing, and yet we know some that fit our corporate partners pretty well. What we do at the Bottom Line Live is we try and talk about subjects in a way that is a bit more divisive and that keeps it interesting. So people will overtalk people. People will do things that traditionally you are not supposed to see in news and media and of things that you guys are talking about of the sorts. I don't come from that school of thought. I want it to be an extension in some respect of reality TV, but also be respectable. So lastly, I would say is I do agree with the point of getting very interesting people on who can talk in those sound bites. And what we've done is we've tried to get a collection of people from Google+, from industry, and from new media and bring them into this space to have their creativity drawn out and to be inspired in ways that they've never seen before. So ours is twofold. And the goal is, after that first hangout, was to keep the conversation actually away from Google Plus and start talking about things that mattered more to people's everyday lives, and not that Google Plus doesn't for all of us. It's our everyday life, right, in a lot of respects. But that's what we're trying to bring to the table, so that's all.
Okay, so let's transition now to Peter, who has done phenomenal work catering to this specific Google Plus community. And Peter, I would say that probably the most well-known of your interviews was the very excellent sit-down that you had. Well, sit-down, separated by 2,500 miles with Chi-Chu, who a lot of people believe is the benevolent father of Hangouts. So you're talking to the guy who basically provided the infrastructure you're using and everything. And your take was interesting because it was just you and him, and yet you brought in comments. You did a lot of research, obviously. You talked about his background and how he came to be, and then you also used a third-party moderator because you had Megan, who's a very popular member of our community. So talk about what that dynamic was like, and then the difference between interacting on a one-to-one situation over this medium, and then also dealing with a room where you've got 9 other people, each of whom want to jump in on every single point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the art of the Hangout interview, that's kind of what we're all talking about here. We all kind of have different approaches, different ways that we've been doing it. Now, Dan, in his real job, does something that I kind of emulate in the way that I do my interviews. Basically, we're dealing with a small, fairly closed community here. Google hasn't been, the social media product hasn't been adopted by the masses yet. So you're kind of dealing with a captive audience. The people that show up on a regular basis are the people that are used to seeing this stuff put in front of them. So how do you get it to relate to them? Well, the best way to do it is to include them. And that's what I found. That's the way a community newspaper works. The way it works is people are interested in reading it to see if there are people that they know are featured in it. Because then they can cut it out and send it to their grandmother and say, hey, look, little Timmy was in the newspaper. And that's why they're interested in seeing people they know included in it. So my style is to be extremely interactive. It's to follow along with the comments, and I can't wait until we can get live chat integration, but to also ask people questions beforehand to figure out what people want to know. So making them as engaging as possible and rewarding people for their engagement by inviting them into the Hangout later. Now, I'm not the first to do that. There are other people, Matthew Rappaport, for example, that have done that before. Mm-hmm. But another thing to keep in mind is what Dan talked about before, is knowing your audience. Now, I have 2 separate Hangouts I do, and they're both on hiatus right now because of my living situation. But one of them, G Plus interviews, where I interview people that people are talking about on G Plus, and we bring in the community to have the Hangout afterwards. But the other one is very focused on niches. It's called How to Make It Work. So each week on this podcast, is available on iTunes. Just search for Peter G. McDermott. I interview different people that work in different industries. And I interview people that have been successful at very particular things. For example, we had Evo Terra on, who is an expert on digital publishing. Now, how many digital publishing experts do you know? Not that many. If you wondered how many social media experts you probably have, dozens upon dozens, if not 200 people you can name off the list of people you follow here. But when you think about very, very concentrated things like digital publishing, how to broadcast music through a live medium and interact with your audience. There's very few people that are very successful in these particular niches. So what I like to find is how they became successful and to share that story. Now, with that in mind, there's a very, very focused audience. So the questions need to be very particular and cater to that audience. And one thing you'll realize with that is that your live viewer participation is not going to be nearly as vast as your on-demand viewer participation will be. And that's an interesting topic we can explore later on.
Okay. Yeah, excellent thoughts from all of you. I think what's interesting in being, a traditional broadcaster, and keep in mind, I've been doing the online thing integrated with the on-air thing for as long as I've been in the media, and that's going on 14 years now. So I kind of see Hangouts and the way that they liberate us to have shows like Hermine so effectively said, it's almost like podcasting when podcasting first came out in 2003 and the great work that Adam Curry did with that format, which kind of harkens back to what was essentially pirate radio before that. You can have a show and you're not hounded over by, by the gods of the FCC, where if somebody should just happen to, let a little S-bomb or F-bomb slip, or, somebody's making a point and they just happen to be a little profane and everything like that, it's not the end of the world. I mean, if your show is geared towards that end, and that's part of your shtick and everything like that, that's perfectly okay. Obviously, you can't take those kind of products and bring them on traditional broadcast media like TV or like radio and everything. But it's really interesting in that regard, and also because we're not limited by the thing that kills us in radio and in television is by time. Dan, I sat in last Saturday at an impromptu hangout he had for Google Plus Week, and then I finally saw it once the thing was uploaded to YouTube. And you were on for what, 4.5 hours, Dan?
That's not actually that long. We've gone 7 or 8 hours. One was 17 hours.
Good Lord. Yeah, but you know.
I got a question for you, Jason. Can I ask you a quick question? I don't want to throw you off script.
Absolutely. No, not at all.
Because really, I think the most exciting thing for all three of us here, I mean, we're eager to offer whatever advice we can give, but you're a professional television mainstream broadcaster, and you're a 6 o'clock news anchor or whatever in Guam. But what I'm curious about is, as you look at Hangout shows, and all three of us do them, what advice might you have for us that we might, maybe not as specifically, but as you look at general Hangout show attempts, what do you think people are doing wrong, or what do you think they could improve upon, or where should their focus be? Because I'm really curious what you have to offer, because, I mean, your audience is, you know, dramatically bigger than any of ours. You know, being on a broadcast television station with a footprint on everybody's TV station on the entire island of Guam. What do you see some mistakes that are being made, just like broadcasting 101 mistakes? You know, newscaster 101 or talk show host 101 mistakes that are being made that you see over time, and you just like roll your eyes when you see them, because I'm really curious to see, you know, your viewpoint on that.
Okay, well, that's a really good question, because, you know, I know the three of you from, you know, just interacting with you guys from all these months since G Plus went up in the field trial, and, you know, the three of us, or the four of us, I should say, have become good friends. The three of you are actually classically trained communications professionals or broadcasters. You know, you work in the journalism field. I'm not. I wound up doing this, and I tell people all the time, I'm qualified for absolutely nothing I do. I went to school to do marketing and music theory. So when I got into the media, and I started here, you know, as a web developer, and then one day, you know, the funny story is, our lead anchor was out, and they're like, you know, we need somebody to sit in and do the news, and we don't think you're ugly. So that literally was my screen test. Which was like which was a nice way of saying, you know, we need you to pull double duty, and we're not giving you any more money to do so. So.
But a new title ensues, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, I'm distracted.
So based on that, my phone rings. So based on that, I've always kind of approached just communications and the journalism field in general as just doing what makes the most sense, and, you know, just doing what is logical, because, you know, I found that, you know, as opposed to engineering or computer science and everything like that, journalism, I mean, you have to rely on the ethics, and you have to rely on, you know, on obviously, you know, the regulatory environment. But as far as presenting your material and wrapping it in a nice package and structuring it in a way that will be pleasing to the audience, and I think, Dan, you hit on the most important topic, is making sure there's some sort of entertainment value to it, because ultimately, at the end of the day, there's 1,000 different alternatives that viewers out there can have if they want to get, you know, sports programming, political commentary, weather, you know, just general entertainment, tech news, you know, just sitting around ranting and everything. Like, what makes your show distinct? And I think ultimately it comes down to the entertainment factor. So for me, what I see with a lot of these shows, all of which have redeeming quality at some point. And I wouldn't say, you know, don't try and emulate what's done on television or what's done on the radio. Just kind of do your own thing, and just do what you think, you know, makes the most sense as far as being a vehicle to getting your message out to the audience and interacting and engaging with your audience. Again, I mean, it's a brave new world out there, but the one thing I would say is, from the shows that I have seen, I really like how people are starting to pick up on ideas, like they're seeing that continuity is good. Like if they have like little segments or little almost like running gags in the context of their show. Like if they say, okay, before we end the show, let's give all of our panelists, you know, like call it like parting shots, or, you know, like a final crack or something like that, or you have like some trivia contest that they just randomly throw out, or, you know, in the middle of the show you can say, okay, Dan, Hermine, and Peter, we're going to play word association with, you know, whatever topic we're talking about, and things that the audience can pick up like that, because they come to expect it, and they can say, hey, the guests this week, I'm just really not feeling them, or this topic doesn't interest me and everything, but yet I'm going to stick around and I'm going to watch, and I'm going to listen, because I know they've got this really funny segment that always makes me crack up and everything. And that's the kind of thing that audiences will gravitate towards. And I think in general, as far as us as the Google Plus community, as far as making Hangout shows unique and distinct, it's just be yourself. I mean, you can't be anything but yourself.
I just thought,
so
Jason, I just
do
thought of an idea.
Do it what you want to do.
I just thought of an idea. What if when you do a show, like if you have a weekly show, and or whatever schedule, if you said, as you got comments on the, when you post the video of it, and then you get comments, and then you, instead of responding to the comments, you pick some of them and you say, I'll be responding to this in the next episode. And it's like on O'Reilly or so many shows where they'll read some emails that they get and they'll respond to them. And that's one of the best things, like viewer mails coming up. On 60 Minutes, they even do it. What if you did that? If you said, I'll be responding to this in the next show, right? You know they're going to watch the next show. Because like if Peter responds or Joe Smith responds or whoever, and if I say I'm going to respond on my next show to your comment, you know he's watching. And B, it encourages more comments, which bumps it up in everyone's stream. That'd be an interesting thing to do.
And see, that's also reminiscent of
idea.
Yeah, that's also reminiscent of what happens in Hollywood because now you're leveraging the almighty cliffhanger.
Yeah, I mean, just like you did with your tease. You're a pro about what you were going to, the answer the question about the McDermotts. But yeah, that would be interesting because then you're like leaving a cliffhanger for the next week. You're getting more participation. That's one thing I did with my shows. We go live on Justin.tv, and I noticed that with them, with the live comments, sometimes they're hot and heavy, and they're great. When we have a big guest, sometimes there are fewer comments just because everyone's really intently watching. And that happened last week. But what I started doing was I started copying and pasting all the comments into the post or a separate post and referencing it. And so I said, here are the comments from Justin. And I found that it exploded because like people knew that like if they typed it, it wouldn't be lost forever, that it would be captured somehow, So that's interesting. There are all sorts of things you learn. And that's the thing. Don't expect to be Charlie Rose your first hangout or your first hangout on air. You're going to get better. If you look at Peter or me or Hermine, all three of us, if you look at our latest things and look at our first, second, third, fifth things, all of us would probably cringe at some of the things we tried and did that didn't work. We've all learned. So don't be afraid to just plunge in the deep end. As long as you can, keep your head above water, you're going to become a better swimmer as you go. And you're going to learn from your mistakes and your successes, and you're going to build.
Well, Hermine was laughing very, very loudly there. So tell us, are there any horror stories you wish to share about some of your older archive material?
Oh gosh, do I have to start? There are a slew of things. I mean, there are pronouncing names wrong. They're not understanding, closing a hangout in the middle of an interview because I tapped the wrong button. Stumbling over phrases. There are ums, uhs, everything other filler humanly possible. I think the best story really was getting somebody else to help produce the show and getting people on it, and then having to do an interview and not being prepared, not knowing exactly how to speak to them, what it was that interested them, and deciding at that moment I was never going to do that again. Yeah, there's been some doozies.
Well, I know from my personal experience, when I look back on tapes of when I first went on the air, as opposed to right now, and again, not like yourself and Peter who we'll go to next, I wasn't trained to know how to control my breath and to breathe and all that stuff and everything. So like stuff that I did in '99 when I first started, I sound like a prepubescent castrated cat, compared to like what I have. And I'm not saying I'm any better right now. I just like Dan said, experience is golden and everything. So Peter, what skeletons do you have in your back catalog?
No, I was never camera shy. No, I never freeze on camera.
Wow.
One of the things I've become better at is dealing with the awkward guest. Everyone's had the awkward guest. You've had it in a phone conversation. You've had it in your living room. But imagine having it with an audience, with people watching, with people listening. Imagine asking an incredibly engaging question with high hopes of a very lengthy and in-depth answer and getting, yeah, So that's the thing, you know, when Dan and Hermine and I, when we plot out these shows, and you do the same thing when you interview people on the news, is you have, you know, you come with your arsenal of questions, and Hermine, I'm going to disagree with one of your prior points here in a minute.
Okay.
But you come with your arsenal of questions, and you know what you're expecting to ask, and you have a certain level of expectation of what the answer is going to be. You know, if, Jason, I were to ask you, tell me about your background in electronic media. I'm expecting for you to give me at least 30 seconds of dialogue. But if you say, I found a book at the bookstore and here I am, that's going to throw me off the train for a minute. And getting better at that is one of the things, you know, because I'm expecting you to go, well, you know, a couple days ago, because normally when you're interviewing people, they like to go on and on and on. I mean, listen to Dan earlier. I mean, it's just, that's the way they work, Dan. I'm just kidding. So, you know, that was one of the things, and we all have a ton of mistakes. You know, if you watch some of this stuff, I've been appearing on TV since I think I was 12 years old. It was the first time I was on ZD TV before it even turned into Tech TV. And, you know, I used to be really, really nervous, and, you know, I'd have that hesitation in my voice, like, oh, my God, people are watching, oh, my God, people are watching, you know. And then it just progressed, and it got better, and you get more comfortable with it after time, and, you know, it got to the point where I was on the Today Show, and, you know, I didn't have that cold sweat or the, you know, the nervous stuttering or stammering when I was talking, and you just become more comfortable with it. But, you know, for me at first, it was, you know, I always wanted to do it, but I had that, I'm not going to say stage fright, because I was so excited to be on. But when I got on, I'm like, oh, I got him on, oh, I got him on, oh, I got him on right now. You know, so getting over that, and that's one of the skeletons in my closet, but also being able to deal with a difficult guest. You know, the people that give you those, the short, closed answers to the open-ended questions, it's very frustrating, very befuddling, but you have to come with a large enough arsenal of questions, or you can do like David Letterman did with Crispin Glover and just walk off to set.
That's true. Real quick chime in. I won't be too long after your comment. I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, have a lot of questions, and the more you do it, you'll get better at it, and then you'll be able to wing it. You know, like I did radio talk since the 80s, right? So I can wing it. But don't be afraid to have 50 questions if you know you're only going to get 30 in or 20 in. Better to have more. And you will get better at it, because the only way to get good at something is to get good at it. Do it. Don't be afraid. Jump in. If you want to, and someone, Hermine just said, you know, you can do it in private and try it, and just do a demo, and not record it or anything. And just do a test. To do it 15 times if you want, if you're nervous about it. To some people it comes naturally. Some, it takes some doing. But just do it, and you'll get really good at it if you do it. That's the only way to get good at it.
Okay, so here's something, and I want to transition to our next topic right now, because given everything that you guys said, the context or the environment specifically of Hangouts, and with us as show hosts, and I know anybody out there that's watching this right now, you can definitely take something away from this, is because everyone who's producing their own Hangout-based show is now challenged to do what we in the television world does, is whether you've got one guest and you're like Peter and it's just himself and Chi-Chu doing a Q&A back and forth, or you're like Dan where you max out the room and Hermine and you have like as many as 9 other people in there, is you are challenged to interact with other people and their thoughts and try and maintain a stream of consciousness in real time. And that's a really hard challenge to do, and this is one of the things that makes being a good interviewer so challenging, because you have to not only think about what you're going to say next, but you also have to listen at the same time and figuring out what your guests are saying and how you can segue from topic A to topic B, or transition from one particular interesting topic into maybe something that's like a little bit more in the same line or completely different to what's going on. So like I said, that's an interesting challenge in and of itself, because you're not only listening and trying to pay attention to what your guest is saying, but you're also trying to think in your head about what you're going to say next. So let me ask, and we'll start with Peter now, is what are some of the challenges that you see of actually interacting with people in real time and, being a manager of a conversation as the host of a show?
Jason, I really respect the point. It's a great question, but you left out about 19 to 25 things that we're doing concurrently while we're managing the conversation. What a lot of people that watch this content, what they don't realize is there's no nonlinear editing. There's no control room. There's no PA to point to the camera. There's no one to tell you, hey, you've only got 3 minutes left. There's no one to hold up the flashcard showing the audience questions. All this depends on whoever's running the Hangout. Now, hopefully, Dan and I will get to the point where we have PAs, where we have a production staff, where we're actually sitting in front of a regular camera. But at the moment, we're charged with finding all of the comment that's going on during the show. We're charged with making sure that your lighting is okay. We're charged with making sure that your audio isn't cutting out. We're charged with making sure that the stream is visible the entire time the interview is going on, as well as keeping up with the show notes, reading the script, and figuring out what we're moving on to next. So, you know, we all kind of manage our workflow to have some sort of show notes and some sort of flow to the show. You know, a certain number of questions. If you hit a series of questions, you realize you're going to get dull answers. You transfer to something else. But you're managing a lot of different things at the same time. So what I would suggest to people is try to do a Sudoku while you're talking to your grandmother on the phone. If you can maintain the conversation with your grandmother on the phone and complete the Sudoku, you might be able to do this. If you have trouble doing that, maybe try something a little bit easier, but you really need to be able to separate the two things that are going on at the same time, because there's going to be a lot of balls in the air that you're going to be juggling at the same time.
Okay, Hermine, your thoughts on trying to not only maintain your own thoughts, but also the thoughts of others, and like Peter just said and everything, maintain also the technical aspect of it. You know, you may be trying to mute people because they may have, you know, a dog walks in the room, their phone rings and everything like that. So you're trying to maintain order and, you know, not.
A dog must have walked into his room. I don't know what happened.
What happened?
Wait a minute, did he just freeze up? I thought Peter just muted him like a joke.
No, no, I'm still here.
Okay.
Okay, proving the point and earning a spot in my uncircled list as soon as we're done with this.
Right,
Peter McDermott.
right, absolutely. Okay, I got to be honest. Listening to Peter gave me a little bit of a heart attack. I realize on some level that is exactly what goes on every week, and I try not to think about any of that. My take with it is to start off with definitely the basics first, and it's just listening to good conversation. It's just at the end of the day having a conversation with 8 or 9 other people, however many that you genuinely like and care about and want to hear their perspective on it. Everything else kind of just takes care of itself. You understand when there's a natural break and it makes sense to go look at the comments that are in the feed. And maybe there's somebody who is on the show who can also take on that role and doesn't mind doing it. There's a part where you have to make sure that it's live streaming. Hey, you know what? Set that computer up before the show starts and allow it to do its thing. So there's parts of it where I agree it can get stressful and it can get challenging, but as much as you can, my belief is to take those elements out of the conversation and doing it before the show even starts. So when I run up against that, I think those are the key insights that I have to offer there.
Okay, so, you know, now of course we go to Dan, who has become famous or infamous, as it were, in our community for basically being the one-man show. And, you know, Dan's been nice enough to privately actually, over a Hangout, show me his rig. And it's a phenomenal setup and certainly, like, way beyond the financial scope of a do-it-yourselfer. But, you know, and Dan's show is one that he has very opinionated guests who have a tendency to really go, what am I trying to say? Really go hardcore. And so a lot of the time, you know, you're almost like you're a goalie of opinions almost. So talk about that now.
Yeah, I host a hockey match every Friday night at 8 p.m. About Google. But yeah, it's different. Okay, here's the deal. Again, I've carefully cultivated a panel of people who are compelling television on purpose. And they're smart and they're interesting and they get in each other's faces. And I love it. And sometimes I have to rein them in. Sometimes I'm like, okay, guys, you know. But it's like the McLaughlin Group. But that's that particular show. Earlier tonight, when I was like just had a couple hours to kill before I did this show with you, Jason, I just read some news stories, and this is a great way to start. Read some stories, sports, news, cooking, whatever that interests you, and just put 3 topics together, 4 topics, 5 topics, and say, I'm going to do a hangout. I want to talk about these things, and put links on the first comment, and that's what I did tonight. And we had a wonderful hangout, and it was casual. Now, the Google Plus week is sort of a big deal, and so I dress as Peter is in a tie, and I do that because I want to set a professional sort of decorum for that particular show, right? But that doesn't mean that that's right for every show. Like tonight, I was sitting here, I'm in glasses, and I got my thing, my polo shirt on, because I was having it's a different show, and so every show is different. I mean, I think Ozzy Osbourne's wife had a show where she was in bed, right, in a nightgown or something, and that lasted for I don't know how many weeks. But every show is different. But the show I try to do is a serious show on Friday night, but other shows I do are different. The key thing is most of us employ, because there's really no money to be made. This is an intellectual and entertaining pursuit. We employ what's called the engineer is producer model, where you're switching everything yourself. There is an advantage to the engineer is not producer model, where you can just sit at a table like the Sunday morning shows hosts do, and they just have a conversation. The best example of this is to look at earlier Leo Laporte's Twit network and look at his current one. In the old place he was at, the Twit Cottage, it was the host was switching everything, and in the new one, they've made it, they've arrived, and they've got a producer, but it's a different vibe, and you can look at both and decide which one you like. But there is a lot of stuff to worry about, and no matter how you do it, it's always better to have good technological switching and stuff. It's very important to try to minimize your distraction, but you're going to be panic-stricken at first, and you're going to work through kinks, but it's okay. Just do it, and you'll get better. I promise you. You will get better at it. But always remember, the most important thing is the content, and is it watchable? Are the topics interesting? Are the guests interesting? Are the guests' opinions worthy of the viewer's time? Or are they just morons spouting nonsense, right? You've got to have good guests, good topics, and you're going to screw up sometimes. And you're going to have a disaster guest. You're going to ask a 1-minute question that you're going to get, like as Peter said, yep, And I've done that in radio, So you have a great balloon festival. It's coming up this Saturday, right? Tell me about it. Yeah, yep. I mean, and like, oh my God, I got 30 minutes, and I'm thinking like you get all these anecdotes. But some people are nervous, some people, whatever. But it's very valuable to highlight the good guests you get and to get them to come back and build up a team, because a good hangout is a team effort with regulars. So anyway,
well, I'd like to jump on your coattails, Dan, for a minute, because talking about funny stories is on broadcast TV. I was hosting a show, and there was a pair of Russian ballet dancers that was coming out here because they were going to perform in a big show that we had out here. So the point I'd like to make is make sure that you do your research and your preparation. I mean, you don't have to write a dissertation, and you don't have to know everything about who you're interviewing to the point of like being a CIA agent, but at least become moderately familiar with them, and hopefully get to know them a little bit, because I did not, and our producers did not. They just said, well, we'll just throw this together. And so the guests came in, and I said, hi, how are you doing? We shook hands and everything. So we sat down, and I said, hi, welcome back to the show. I'm Jason Salas, using my anchor voice. We said, now we have here, and so how do you like being on the island, and like how do you enjoy the hospitality, and what do you like? Don't tell me they're not speaking. And nobody bothered telling me that these two dancers spoke absolutely no English. So they began to talk back in Russian. And we're at the beginning of a show, right? And I was like, I just looked at the camera, and I was like, this is going to be a long 30 minutes, folks.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that
a 3-minute block you had to fill? You had to fill 3 minutes?
30 minutes. Yeah,
oh,
well,
was it live?
It was a 30-minute. Yeah, and it was live. So lesson learned there.
What happened? What was the result? We got to hear the end of this.
Well, we just, I know enough Russian to basically tell a woman that she looks beautiful and to ask where the restroom is. So we kind of stumbled through it, and fortunately we had, we kind of figured out during commercial break and everything like what the comfort areas were, and we finally just said, okay, well, we'll pull the cameras back and everything, perform your number and everything, and that'll kill 10 minutes of it right there. Just dance. So once again, dance is the universal language.
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
Okay.
You weren't
so
laughing.
here's the topic I wanted
That's
to bring.
funny.
Yeah, I can laugh about it now, but like.
Well, you say that dance is
the
universal language. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I saw my entire career flash before my eyes at that moment. But but
say
also, and I don't think people have done. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I don't mean to cut you off. It was just that you said that dance is a universal language, and one of the things I found here is that individuals talking about themselves is the universal language. So if I can get anyone to just talk about themselves all day, and it may not be even on topic, but it works every time. And they'll tell you some of the most intriguing points of who they are as a person, and then everything else just kind of can flow from there. But if you can get some of the good stories from childhood and then on, you've won them. Sorry.
That's a really good point. Okay. Like Peter, what's your experience been, I should say, as far as hitting uncomfortable periods of dead air, or just completely having a show blow up in your face as mine did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's happened before.
Precise.
Yeah, no, I mean, it happens, and sometimes there's a hesitation because you're going to ask questions. Now, Jason, you brought up an interesting point, which is doing the research on your guests. First thing you want to do is you want to flatter your guest by proving that you took the time to learn about them. It makes them feel important. It makes them want to talk more about themselves because it really makes the conversation seem genuine. When I say, Jason, you've been single for a long time. What are some of the challenges you've had with finding the right woman for you? You're a very successful gentleman, and this, that, and the other. All of a sudden, you're totally flattered. You're like, how did he find out I'm single, and how does he know that I can't find the right woman? Dude, I just checked out your profile. It says you're single. That was easy to do. But that enriches the conversation. That shows to you that I'm genuinely interested in conversing with you, and that I've made an investment on our time speaking together. So I found that that's one of the great ways to curb the awkward interview, is, as you said before, by doing your research. Now, you are going to hit those pockets where you're going to ask a deep, thought-provoking question. And your guess is, they're going to take a minute to think about what they're going to say, and you're going to have that awkward pause where you're like, do I interject and change the subject and move on to something else, or do I let them complete the thought? So that's one of the challenges you'll face, and you're just going to learn how to feel things out. And as Dan and Hermine said before, you just keep doing it. And the repetition, you're going to start understanding those social cues, because you're putting people in a situation that they wouldn't necessarily be in if you were asking them a question at a bar, because they have an audience. You're comfortable with the audience, but you have to remember your guest is not always comfortable knowing that there are people watching. Now, Hermine and Dan and I both know, all three of us know, that when we host these things, the live audience, at this moment in time, hopefully in a year or two, this is going to change, and with the new YouTube integration, it will certainly change for some of us. The live audience isn't necessarily what we're trying to captivate, because the little-known secret is there aren't 5,000 people watching us right now. There's probably 7 or 8, hopefully. I mean, that's being optimistic. Mm-hmm. So, well, the 4 of us in this Hangout know that we don't have a lot of live viewers right now. We're very excited that we do have those live viewers. If you are watching, interact with us. Leave a comment on one of the posts. Let us know that you're watching. If you have any questions, if you want to make fun of Dan, or if you want me to walk into the other room and strangle him because we live in the same house, apparently, I can't really do that, but leave a comment and ask us to do that. But, knowing the audience is something we do. We know who's actually watching, but the guests, they're going to come in with cold feet. And just being warm, showing that you've invested in them by learning about them, is going to help them warm up to you a lot more. And then understanding what questions you're asking that are very probing, they may take more time to answer. Now, you are going to hit patches. You're going to hit patches of things where you think the guest might be very knowledgeable, and it turns out they're really not. You may ask a line of questions and realize the guest was distracted, and then maybe you have to move on to another topic or kind of segue into a different subject. But doing that gracefully is what's most important. In recognizing the dead air and filling the dead air, as Hermine said before, that's also very important, because the last thing you want to happen is for a guest to answer a question
Exactly. Yep.
That right there.
I mean, that's what you're trying to archive views, like for Google.
Okay, and I want to add something.
Yeah, it's 1,000 to 1. I mean, 1,000 times the people, between 500 and 1,000 people will watch after the show runs, then watch it live. It's dramatic, and Leo Laporte has the same thing.
Okay, well let me also I'm sorry, Dan. Let me also append something to what Peter said, because that was a really good point, and about the YouTube integration. And this is why this new medium is taking what we've known as traditional mass media communication into a completely different realm. Because, like Peter said, there may only be 7 or 8 people watching this broadcast right now, but once it goes up on YouTube and once it's archived, it can be enjoyed in perpetuity, theoretically for all time. So you're not only making a show for the moment. Hopefully you want to structure your content. You want to have like a conversation that's got a little bit of shelf life to it, because you never know who's going to stumble across and find this in some search, or deliberately like embedding it on a stream or a web page 6 hours from now, 6 days from now, 6 months from now, 6 years from now.
Mm-hmm. That's a constant battle, Jason, because someone will share something in chat and forget that we're doing a show, and they'll say like, "Oh, I embedded the link of the site I was talking about in the chat." And I'm like, no, like, what's the link? Spell it out, because like most people are going to watch this show after the fact. They'll watch it tomorrow. They'll watch it in an hour, or 12 years from now. What's the site? Spell it out, because you got to remember the audience is first. This is not about 4 of us having a conversation. This is about the 4 of us trying to have an enjoyable time presenting information that's entertaining and interesting and informative for folks watching the show now and in the future. And so you've got to present them all the information that way. So you always got to be cognizant of quirks like that.
I think the thing that's most interesting, or of point for me, is I do come from the advertising and more the strategic planning stand.
Okay, we'll tell you what. This has been absolutely fantastic. So I have one more topic, and then we'll go ahead and go round robin, and give you guys a chance to like plug all your own individual shows and have like final thoughts, and we'll wrap up. Okay, so obviously the big draw for any show, and you can do a show from week to week featuring a very well-known member of some sort of community, or you can just you can pepper your show by saying, hey, coming up, as Dan just did, and he said you actually had the founder of Craigslist. You had Craig Newmark on, and that was a landmark moment. So for our last topic, and we'll start with Dan and everything, talk about including the celebrity factor in Hangout interviews. And how was it, Dan, when you interviewed Craig, and how was it trying to control your panel and having 8 other people that had like a million questions for Craig and everything?
How to land a celebrity, is that your question?
Yeah, well, not only landing celebrities, but also when you integrate a celebrity with the show that either sporadically or like week to week and everything. Like, how was that experience for you when you actually had what's considered an A-lister in the web community? Okay,
it was really interesting because I've interviewed also. I mean, I've covered Barack Obama when he was running for president. So but that was for newspapers, right? And so, but for Google Plus Week, this was the first A-lister, as you said. So it was a unique experience. The way I got him was I posted something. And Jeff Jarvis, who's a big Google author, shared my post, and then Craig Newmark shared my post via Jeff Jarvis. And so I knew I had about 3 hours where Craig Newmark might recognize my name. And so I emailed him right away while it was hot, and I said, hey, I'd love to have you on the show. Now, luckily, I had a good product to show and say this is what it is. But when you deal with this level of person, an accomplished big time guy who's a household name worldwide, except in Antarctica, as we learned. You've got like PR folks to deal with and stuff like that. But if you can get them, if you're lucky, it's lucky. I mean, I've asked plenty of celebrities who I don't talk about who have not been on the show, but I'm still working on, or they can't do it this week. They're hard to book. And some you got to pay, but I've never paid a guest. It's hard. But if this, as Peter will tell you, and I'm sure he'll affirm it, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you are, really aggressively looking for them, and you bug them enough times, then they'll eventually do your show. But in this case, it was a single email, and I got an email back that said we'd love to do the show. And then I was nervous. And he had never done a Hangout before, so he was a little nervous. But I thought it was fantastic. But then there were some control issues with the Hangouts because I really wanted to ask him a few questions about Craigslist, but talk about his new thing, right? Because when you get a big-time celebrity on, they usually want to talk about their new project or their new book or their movie or whatever. And this is a logistical problem that we've discussed in more detail in private posts, but it's a logistical problem in general. How do you deal with that with the Hangout situation where you invite people and you want to give them a pep talk or whatever, but people can join in midstream and they may not understand that you want to talk about this? And in a couple places, it unfortunately, with him, reverted into a couple people doing a personal tech support questionnaire session, and I was like pulling my hair out, and I was like, "What are we doing?" But overall, it was fantastic, and I was honored to talk to him because I don't think he'd ever done a Hangout before, and he rarely does interviews, and he's an extremely interesting person. So it was a coup for the show, clearly, that's the thing. It's a whole different set of circumstances. Get a good product first before you hit them up, and that'll increase your chances of landing, an A-lister.
Okay, go ahead, Peter. Because I was just going to say this is this is so unlike traditional TV because you've got people jumping in and out of the Hangout, which on TV would never happen. You got to move people in and out during commercial breaks, but now you can actually have people come in. They're like, "Oh, I've got a question," which you just covered with the guest. So essentially, you're just wasting your time. Okay, so that having been said, go ahead, Peter.
I want to get to that. Let me get back to what Dan just said first, and that is having a back catalog, having something that you can show a potential guest. Hey, man, I mean, this is what I've been doing for the last few months. If you're interested in doing it, let me know. Because what you're going to find, once you start getting back catalog, once you start getting reputation, my reputation started as the guy that interviewed will.i.am. How that all happened, how it panned out, how I got the one-on-one with will.i.am for 12 minutes, I'm never going to know. But it was cool. It was great. And it gave me this thirst that I wanted to quench to just continue doing this every week. So, as Dan has said, the squeaky wheel is going to get the grease. You have to go after people. You have to go after them and after them and after them. I mean, when you see some of these people on the Today Show, and when you see them on MSNBC, there are PAs that did nothing but call their press office 8 times a day until they finally got the interview booked. I mean, you literally just have to keep doing it. This week isn't going to work. That week isn't going to work. Go after them. Go after them. Go after them. That's how I got Ashley Escapa to do one of the interviews with me. And I have a bunch of people that I've promised to interview, but I'm not ready yet because I want to grow that audience. I want to finesse the product. And I want to make sure that when I have these landmark moments, and Dan finally got to the point, he got the momentum he needed to have the founder of Craigslist on a show, and he was very successful in doing that. I think I'm a couple steps behind Dan in establishing my audience and the regularity of my show, due to some circumstances right now. But let me tell you, there are 3 surprise guests that are coming up after I move, and I can't tell you much about them, but it's going to be absolutely incredible. So
tell us who the surprise guests are, Peter.
Again, what the
I can't tell you. But after April 21st, every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, you'll want to watch. There's going to be 3 incredible surprise guests that I'm keeping under wraps right now because it's so cool. But they're people that have already agreed to do the show. But I had to have that realization. Well, wait a minute, we're not ready yet. We haven't done the marketing yet. We don't have a strong enough back catalog. We don't have the tribe established that I want when we go to produce this content. Because when we produce this content, I want it to have some semblance of virality. I want people to be interested and engaged in it immediately when they see it because they know this is a quality product. So that goes to that. And now I completely forgot what the point was you made right before I got back to Dan's point.
About people jumping in and out and, you know, like
Right.
like replicating questions and, you know, just wasting time.
Right, right. So to get to that, one of the things that I talked about earlier is recognizing your live audience versus your syndicated audience, right? So one of the important things that we didn't have time to discuss tonight, and this is a whole nother conversation, is content distribution. You are responsible for syndicating your content because you're not going to get the NBC affiliates across the country saying, hey, Dan, we love your show. We want to put it in at the 10 o'clock hour on Sunday mornings. That's not going to happen. You're responsible for pushing this stuff out, getting it syndicated, and building the tribe to follow it. So in talking about the Hangout thing, here's where we have a lot of control because we've identified that our live audience at this moment, and when you start to do your own Hangout shows, I've got news for you. You're not going to have that many people watching live. Leo Laporte doesn't have that many people watching live. Jerry Springer only has the people in the audience watching live. That's all done on tape delay. What you now have is control. You have non-linear editing, which means you get to cut things out and put them back together and create a more quality product for your audience. So let that live thing be raw. Let it have those moments. Let it have, you know, these whoops-a-daisies and things. Because I'm going to tell you what, the one thing you do want is you want that catalog of bloopers. So eventually, when you're doing promotions, you can show off some of those things. But just let it be organic. I mean, if you try to make the Hangout where you've invited more people in to be very forced and very scripted, you're going to run into issues. You're going to get frustrated with yourself. So that's why I've separated my show into two different things. I have the 20 to 30-minute segment, which is the actual one-on-one interview, and then there's the 30-minute to an hour segment, which is the conversation afterwards. And that can be cut down, trimmed, and we can cut out those moments. But I actually just like leaving them raw. But you have two different products. It's like when you get a DVD, you can watch the regular cut or you can watch the extended version. So that's how I control that.
Well, Peter, I was also going to say, like, you know, in you teasing what you've got coming up and everything like that, you have mastered the art of the cliffhanger so much, I could swear you were a writer for Jersey Shore. You were that good.
Well, I appreciate that.
Okay, so let's go to Hermine for our final thoughts on the use of celebrities within Hangout shows.
You know what? I'm just going to leave it there because I'm creating so much noise here that please continue on.
No, you're fine now. We can hear you.
Yeah, you're fine.
Oh, you can?
No, it's perfect now.
Yeah.
It's perfect now.
Well, there you go. You know, the celebrities that I've had on before have been more the anchor, the news, things associated with Google+, and really my excitement around it was their willingness to be on. It definitely gave the shows a lift and gave us something to talk about and really built that excitement. I have not interviewed some of the level of the people that you guys have, but I have set up those interviews, and that's why I'm excited. And it looks like all of us are coming together in the next 2 to 3 weeks to really develop and grow some big things. I'm going to be in a different challenge in that the people that I'm asking are some of the leaders of business and industry. They're not as used to being interviewed. They have their own technology challenges with Google+, right? So that takes a lot of my time just to get them ready and able to talk. And they'll be able to speak from an advertising, maybe marketing standpoint. So that's what I'm excited about, is bringing that level in here, and it won't be a tech crowd. One of the challenges that I've had, and maybe some other people can speak to this, as you start to get categories that you're passionate about, you're interested in interviewing others around, there may not be that network already here on Google+. So it may be something that not only are you creating the show, you're creating the network and the following here on this platform to help grow what it is that you're trying to achieve. So there is some added challenges with that, but it is also a benefit because you're able to carve that out for yourself and create the space and however you want it to develop. So when I can say with that, the celebrities, I'm just excited. I'm thrilled, and I can't tell you guys, all three of you, how much I have learned from you tonight. Thank you.
All right, outstanding. Okay, so for those of you who are watching right now, watching a live stream, or you may be watching this, as I said, somewhere down the road, and you're taking notes, if there is one hallmark of doing a show, it is of course shameless self-promotion. And there is no better way to get the word out about your show, and like Hermine just said, to network than actually plugging your stuff. And there is no shame in showing off, and also helping other people grow their shows and everything. So I guess I'll start out. So as far as Hangouts On Air show, I tried to come up with a few different titles for it. I finally settled on Plus Pals Debate. ... with the ellipsis there and everything, because I figured that would give enough creative freedom to kind of go off on a few different tangents as far as topics, and bring in, different guests from time to time, and, people that I've interacted with. And so, say, like, if somebody likes sports, I can bring in, like 7 or 8 people that I know, or if somebody likes history, or if somebody likes software development, or if somebody likes film, I can bring in all these different people. And, I'm not trying to appeal to a billion different people out there. The way I figure about it, and, like, this isn't a revenue source for me, obviously, so at some point out there, it's kind of the old Mystery Science Theater 3000 approach, where somebody out there is going to get it, and somebody out there is going to like it. And if 5 people like it and 1 million people don't, that's okay with me. I'm just trying to make people laugh at the end of the day. So that's my big thing. I mean, I tried a bunch of different titles for it. I was thinking of creating a show called Circle Jerks, and hoping that people would pick up on, what's essentially the triple entendre about that. But then, it didn't test well. yeah, and obviously that kind of implies a certain type of content there. So that one did not test well with the friends I tried that. Okay, so that's as far as show promotion and everything. That's where I'm going with the show. Let's go to Dan now. So like John Lovitz used to say on Saturday Night Live, please plug away.
Oh, just my name's Dan McDermott. I publish 3 newspapers. We have a big issue coming out with 2 potential national stories. One involves the alleged White House gate crashers, one of whom ran off with the lead guitar player for Journey, and they were in court this week. And we had the only reporter there. Yeah, Neil Sean. I had the only reporter in the courtroom, and we have the only artwork, and we'll be breaking that Thursday night, and probably TMZ and everybody will put that out. And then also, we have a really interesting story involving a tow truck, and that's all I can say. But those will print and go on the web Thursday night, and so I'm excited about that. But my main show as far as for this audience here is Google Plus Week, which I'm proud of. We've built up a great panel, and in fact, you're the only one who hasn't been on the show yet, Jason. I think these other 2 have been on. Peter's on all the time. But Jason just finished up a gig, a sports gig, so he's going to hopefully be joining us soon. So I look forward to that. But Google Plus Week is a great show. All of us volunteer and just talk about our thoughts, similar to this, but about Google Plus and tech news and stuff. And that's Fridays, 8 p.m. live, and just Google Plus Week, and you'll find it.
All right, thank you. Well, Dan, you're interesting because you can actually go into exhaustive detail about what happened in court, and the lead guitarist of Journey, Neil Sean, and like some things he may have been involved in, and then you can say, well, I've also got a story coming out about a tow truck.
It's a crazy story that you're gonna love. Yeah.
What journalistic polarity, Dan McDermott? Okay, so for our next plug, we go to our other McDermott, certainly one who is equally appreciated by the Google Plus community. Peter, what do you got coming up?
Well, starting next week, I'm going to be replacing Brian Williams on the NBC Nightly News as the previous... No, I've got nothing. I've got a podcast that I do every Saturday called How to Make It Work. Just search for it on iTunes, and then I can get into my very theatrical, broadcasting voice that you're really not supposed to do, and tell you about the great show every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, called G Plus Interviews, where we're talking to the people that people are talking about. You'll have the chance to interact live on the show by leaving your comments below the live stream. Stay tuned after the one-on-one interview. You, too, will have the chance to join the Hangout and ask the celebrity your own questions. G Plus Interviews, Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.
Very nice. Go Vols. All right. Well done, Peter. Okay, Hermine, you get the last word. Lady gets the last word.
I don't know how I finish after that.
What do we got coming up on your various creations?
Various creations. I do. Monday nights, we have Mad Mondays. So if you are a fan of AMC's Mad Men, please join us. Think about joining us 8 Central on Mondays to talk about all of the good stuff from the show. Tuesdays, we will start up again the Bottom Line Live here shortly, and just a bunch of executives and people that are passionate about particular products. How do you like that? To talk 8 o'clock, 8 Central as well. And then Sundays, you'll start to be able to join Re-Network and get a little bit of faith and a healing hour or two as we bring in faith-based communities and sermons and everything about God and the lights that should inspire. Who knows? We'll see. That's it.
All right, wonderful. Well, hey, the three of you, I thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. Hopefully we've been able to pass on some tidbits and make a whole bunch of folks, give them something to think about, and please, anybody out there, if you're doing a Hangout show, let us know, because as people who were lucky enough to jump in the pool early and everything like that, I'm sure I can speak for the entire panel right here when we say we would love to see what you're working on. We would love to continue to lend our expertise and our experience to you and helping you make your own shows the very best they can be, up until the point, of course, when we can all make some money off this, and then we're just cutthroat, bloodthirsty competitors and everything. But at least for the moment, we're more than happy to help everybody, and let's really make this wonderful medium that we've been provided with the very, very best it can be. So, Dan, Hermine, and Peter, thank you so much for your time. I sincerely appreciate it, and I will see you guys online later on.
Right.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jason.
All right, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Okay, who's starting the next Hangout?